Hey everybody, hope you're doing as well as you can be, and thanks so much for watching. Today I want to talk about the idea of war and what it means to be anti-war. As I record this on October 31st, 2023, of course, there are the front and center conflict happening in Palestine, along with the existing wars we already have going on. And ever since I've known the true cost of war and really understood what war can be like, I have considered myself anti-war. But with all of this going on, I've been just wondering, well, what does that really mean? What does that mean to me to be anti-war? And I think, and I can easily say I'm anti-war, but yes, if I were to dig into the details, what exactly does all that mean? And I've been talking to a few people about this recently. The concept of anti-war, I've gotten a good amount of feedback. And as always, I'm going to go into my thoughts about this. And I believe these are currently where I stand, but I imagine these will evolve over time. But again, in this, I would love to hear your thoughts, and what you believe. Do you consider yourself anti-war? What does that mean to you? And yeah, would you add anything to what I have here? So why don't we kick it off? The first thing to me when it comes to being anti-war would be to treat human life as sacred. And that means all human life. That especially means civilians, innocent people who have no direct impact on a war or a conflict itself. And that is paramount to me. Treat human life as sacred. And as we go along in these conflicts, I see the acknowledgement of one atrocity in one place, but not the acknowledgement of an equal and to me, even bigger atrocity on one side. There is not equal weight carried across atrocities, across terrible things that happen. And we're seeing that in real time in Palestine right now, in my opinion. So I think if we're going to acknowledge one, we have to acknowledge all. And again, going back to it, we need to honor and keep sacred human life, especially people that are innocent, that can't protect themselves, children, the elderly, the disabled. And it's just awful what we're seeing right now. And it's happening before our eyes. And I hope as we go along, more people will speak out against this. And that's what I'm trying to do. 2, there is nuance in almost every situation. Things are not black and white. For the most part, in most situations. And I think, as I'll get into, we're told that things are black and white. There is good and evil. There is one bad party in all of this. But there is almost always nuance. And I think we need to slow down and understand that and acknowledge that and be people who look for the nuance and agree on the nuance. Because it is, again, almost never black and white. But we're told to believe that it is. Next, in being anti-war, I think we have to understand and really know the horrors of war. And I think people that I've seen online, and I'm sure if you've been looking around, you're seeing a lot of people cavalierly call for war, cavalierly calling for destruction. When especially here in the US, it doesn't really affect us directly, but war has a long and deep impact. And I believe it has an impact across the globe, even if it doesn't touch us. For those that are in favor of war, do you understand the long-term costs, the effects of upon entire countries? I think of Ukraine, an existing war. Ukraine is mostly destroyed at this point, right? It has been laid to waste. Entire generations of youth, tens of thousands of people have been lost, where we kind of cheer on this war and don't do things that are coming next on my list, like look for diplomacy, find ways to de-escalate. And what is the cost of that? Who really wins in war? Right? We've been in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria. Yemen. Can you speak to any actual victories in these long, 20 years long, trillion-dollar wars? Is there any actual victory? Are we actually safer? When you say you're going to annihilate a terrorist organization, can you really do that? Does that actually make us safer? Does that make more people like us or hate us, right? And so more of this kind of violence, more of this aggression breeds more of that. Do you think a person who, in the example of Palestine, if a child is in a war zone and countries and people stand up and they say, we need to put a stop to this, we need to help them, do you think that person's going to grow up hating us? Or the person who has maybe had much of their family killed because nobody did anything, do you think that person's going to grow up wanting to be kind and wanting to be compassionate, or wanting to have vengeance, right? There are such long-term costs. And I think overall, our world being in a war mindset, it trickles down in ways we can't even really comprehend, in that even in our everyday society, we're warring with each other. We're using black and white thinking. We're looking at people as our enemy. And I don't think people consider that when they think of war, but that does trickle down in that way. Whether it's thousands of miles away or not, this will affect us. It will affect us socially. It will affect us economically. And there's just so many ways that often people don't even comprehend when they just cavalierly call for war. Next, I would say being anti-war means questioning what you hear, not being a mouthpiece. This is probably one of the harder ones in this list, with misinformation the way it is these days. When you hear something, right, do we often look to verify this? But where things come at us, we're emotional, and we turn around and we share that information, right? Most information from mainstream media I consider to have a narrative, to tell us things, to put us in that black and white thinking, to say, hey, they're an enemy. We need to defeat that enemy. Where again, there is nuance, and there is a narrative. There is a bias, and these entities want us to believe a certain thing. They're not trying to give us news. And the same goes across social media. And the same goes across the ability for content to just be faked these days. But I think one of the biggest things here is not only kind of questioning what we hear, but also interrupting our kind of information loop, where we receive something and we just turn around and maybe reshare it or believe it without kind of stopping and pausing and taking a moment to actually see how we feel about it. Not only that, doing the research and maybe trying to verify, but also sitting down and just taking a moment and feeling into how something affects you. And I think, yes, with our information age and things flying around so fast, it's hard to slow down and do those things. But I feel like we absolutely have to do that. We have to question the information we're getting. We have to try to validate it. And we have to really feel into how it affects us and see what we believe, not to believe something that's coming at us. Next, in keeping an anti-war mindset is, to me, understanding that profits can be made from war, and that there is a war machine. War is a business, and we are partially funding it. And so an example that comes to mind right now that has been in my head a lot lately, the U.S. Secretary of Defense, his name is Lloyd Austin. He came into this position in the Biden administration. Where was he before that? He was at Raytheon, one of the world's biggest weapons manufacturers, making millions of dollars working for them, and I think a very high role, very senior role there. And so went right from Raytheon, one of the biggest weapons manufacturers, to a role in the United States that has a direct impact on war. So my question is, do you think this person cut all ties with Raytheon, that they're not talking to him, that he's not benefiting from this relationship in some way, in being able to determine and give direction to war? Do you think this person's trying to de-escalate situations? or listening to Raytheon and just trying to decide where to send the next warheads. So there are many examples of this. When war can generate money and profits, there will always need to be war. These weapons manufacturers depend on war. It is their whole reason for existence in most cases. So I think we need to keep this in mind, and we need to fight against this. We need to call these things out. We need to try to build a world where money cannot be made off of war. People cannot be made rich from war. Our tax dollars are literally going into a war machine that is committing murder right now, in my opinion. And on top of that, people are getting rich off of this right now. So again, it's one of those things to really keep in mind, in my opinion, and always do our best to fight against it. And again, build a world where this is not possible. Next on my list, I would add in the idea of leading with de-escalation. And this speaks to my previous point. When money can be made off of war, why would we ever lead with de-escalation and diplomacy? And that is something we need to change. In so many cases, I think in most cases, there are opportunities for diplomacy, for trying to work something out, for instead of ramping things up, say, hey, let's cease fire, let's talk, and try to work things out. And speaking of ceasefire, I do believe we need a ceasefire right now in Palestine. And I'm glad people are calling for that. But fighting for and leading with de-escalation. You may not have seen this because it wouldn't be covered in the mainstream news, but in the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine war, Russia came forward with not a demand, but they came forward with an offer that they wanted us to no longer encroach on their borders for their agreement that they would not, they would pull out from Ukraine in specific areas. And the United States, I believe England and other European powers came in and fought to deny that offer. And here we are years later in war, right? People making money and profits. So leading with de-escalation diplomacy is something important to me and something that we should call out, fight for, and demand. Lastly, just to bring it around, to just think of the humanity. Get out of this one side is evil mindset. There is always nuance. There is always a narrative that others in power want us to believe, but we need to come back to our humanity, to empathy. I am so surprised that some of the things I'm seeing online where people are calling for war and destruction and death of civilians that have families. We all have families. And just the simple idea of trying to look at our families and imagine them in a war zone. Imagine our families getting wiped out. Imagine having to decide whether you huddle in one room so you all die if a bomb hits you, or if you separate so some of the family will survive. Imagine having to make that decision. People are not even considering this. And it's really saddening. And I'm hoping the more people that speak out and the more people that bring these things to light might change a few people in the right direction. Put yourself in others' shoes. Just look at the people you love and imagine the worst things that are happening in other places happening to them. So those are the things I have for now. Again, I think this list might evolve over time. It might change, but I really wanted to think through what being anti-war means to me. And again, I would love your thoughts. Do you consider yourself anti-war? If no, with no judgment, I'd be curious why. I would genuinely love to hear from you and hear why. If yes, do you agree with my views? Do you have your own? Do you have anything you would add? Again, would love to hear from you. You can comment. You can reach out to me on social media via email if you like. And if you've made it this far, Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate that. And I will catch you again in the next one. Thanks so much again.